Epicurus was born in 340 BC and was raised at Samos by his schoolmaster father. As an Athenian citizen, he reported for 2 years of military service when he was 18. He taught philosophy in Asia Minor before buying a home and the garden at Athens, where he taught from 306 BC until his death in 270 BC. According to the biography by Diogenes Laertius, Epicurus wrote extensively, but only a few letters and short sayings remain. His atomistic philosophy was later described in the poem On the Nature of Things by Lucretius. Epicurus summarized his ethical teachings in a letter to Menicius and in his 40 authoritative doctrines. A 14th century manuscript discovered in 1888 from the Vatican Library included many more sayings by Epicurus and is entitled Pronouncements of Epicurus. Other fragments are quotations of Epicurus from other classical writers. Epicurus' letter to Menicius. Epicurus to Menicius, greeting. Let no one who is young delay loving wisdom, nor let the aging tire of philosophy. For no age is too early or too late for a healthy soul. Saying that the season for loving wisdom has not arrived, or that it is past, is like saying that the time for happiness has not yet come, or is gone. Therefore both young and old must love wisdom, so that while aging one may be young in good things by the grace of what has been, while the young may at the same time also be old, because of not fearing the future. So we should care for the things that make happiness, since if this is present, we have everything. But if it is absent, everything we do is to gain this. I have been constantly recommending that you practice and care for these things, holding them to be the elements of a beautiful life. First, think of the living God, immortal and blessed. As the common idea of God is engraved on minds, and do not attribute to this anything alien to its incorruptibility or its blessedness, but believe about this all that upholds its incorruptibility and blessedness. For gods do exist. The knowledge of them is clear, but they are not what many think, for most do not uphold the same ideas about them. And impious is not the one who denies the gods of many, but the one who imposes on the gods the opinions of many. For the statements of many about the gods are not true conceptions, but false assumptions. Thus it is that great harms come to the bad from the gods and help to the good. For being accustomed to their own virtues, they welcome those like themselves, while rejecting all others as alien. Accustom yourself to thinking that death is nothing to us, for all good and bad is in perception, and death is the deprivation of perception. Thus the right understanding that death is nothing to us makes the mortality of life enjoyable, not by adding to life infinite time, but by removing the yearning for immortality. For life has no terror for the one who truly understands that there is nothing terrible in not living. So one is foolish saying one is afraid of death, not because it will be painful in the future, but in the present. For whatever does not annoy in the present is a meaningless pain in expectation. So the most terrifying of evils, death, is nothing to us, since when we are, it is not present. And when death is present, then we do not exist. So it is nothing either to the living or to those who have ended, since for the former it does not exist, and the latter no longer exist. But many avoid death now as the greatest of evils, but then welcome it as rest from things in life. The wise neither declines life nor fears not living, for life does not offend him, nor does he believe that not being alive is bad. Just as food is not chosen only for the larger portion, but for the more pleasant. So the wise enjoy the time that is not longer but happier. The one who advises the young to live well and the aged to make a fine end is foolish, not only because of life being welcome, but also because a fine life and dying well are the same care. Much worse is the one who says it is well not to be born, but once born, pass quickly through the gates of Hades. For if one says this from conviction, why does he not depart from life? For it is easy to do this if one is firmly resolved on this, but if mocking, it is vain to those allowing it. We must remember that the future is neither ours nor wholly not ours, so that we cannot completely expect it as existing, nor despair of it completely as not existing. It should also be recognized that of desires, some are natural, but others are vain. Of the natural, some are also necessary, and others are only natural. Of the necessary desires, some are necessary for happiness, some for the repose of the body, and others for life itself. For whoever has a clear and certain understanding of these things will direct every preference and aversion toward the health of the body and an untroubled soul, since this is the goal of a blessed life. For we do all things for the sake of this, how to have neither grief nor fear. Once this has occurred for us, the storm of the soul is dissolved, and the living creature does not have to proceed searching for what is lacking, nor for anything else by which the good of the soul and the body will be fulfilled. For then we have need of pleasure, when we are pained from pleasure not being present. But when we are not pained, we no longer need pleasure. And because of this, we say that pleasure is the beginning and end of a blessed life. For we recognize pleasure as the first and innate good, and from this we originate every choice and aversion. And we return to this as the measure of feeling for judging every good. Also, since this is our first and native good, for this reason we do not choose every pleasure, but we may pass over many pleasures when a greater annoyance accompanies them. And often we consider pains better than pleasures, when submission to the pains for a long time results in greater pleasure for us. So every pleasure, because of its natural relationship, is good, though not all are chosen, just as every pain is bad, and not all are always to be avoided. Yet by measuring one against another, and by looking at the advantages and disadvantages, all these things must be judged. For sometimes we experience the good as bad, and other times the bad as good. Also we consider self-sufficiency a great good, not so that we use little in all cases, but in order to be content with little if we do not have much, being truly persuaded that they have the sweetest enjoyment who least need it. And as the natural is easily obtained, but the vain is hard. For simple foods bring us much pleasure as expensive ones, once the pain of need has been removed. And bread and water produce the highest pleasure when they are brought to those in need. Becoming accustomed, therefore, to a simple and inexpensive diet supplies both the fullest health and makes a person alert for the necessities of life. And it puts us in better condition when we come at intervals to the expensive. And it prepares us to be fearless toward chance. So when we say that pleasure is the goal, we do not mean the pleasures of the prodigal and idle enjoyment, as some think in ignorance and in not agreeing or taking it badly, but not to feel pain in the body, nor to be troubled in the soul. For it is neither drinking nor carousing together, nor enjoying children and women, nor fish and other things brought to an expensive table, which produce a pleasant life, but sober reasoning and examining the motives for every choice and avoidance, and eliminating those beliefs through which the greatest confusion takes hold of the soul. Of all these, the first and greatest good is prudence, thus making prudence even more valued than philosophy. From it all remaining virtues are derived, as it teaches it is not possible to live pleasantly without living prudently, nobly, and justly. Nor can one live prudently, nobly, and justly without living pleasantly. For the virtues have grown into the life of pleasure, and the life of pleasure is inseparable from these. Then who do you think is better than the one who has holy beliefs about the gods, and about death no fear at all, and has considered the end of nature, and realizes that the limit of the goods is easily fulfilled and obtained, while the time or pain of evils is slight? Laughing at fate brought in by some as master of all, rather he says that some things occur by necessity, some by chance, and others by ourselves because of seeing that necessity is irresponsible and chance unstable. But what is by us is not despotic, and to it naturally follows blame and the opposite, since it is better to accept the myths of the gods than to be enslaved by the fate of scientists. For by honoring the gods, one underwrites hope of intercession, while necessity has no intercession. Holding that chance is not a god, as many think, for there is no disorder in the acts of God, nor is it an uncertain cause. He does not believe that good or evil are given by this to people for a blessed life, though it may supply the beginning of great good or evil, thinking that the misfortune of the logical is better than the good fortune of the illogical. For it is better in this for actions well judged, not to be made right by chance. Therefore take care of these things and related ones by yourself, and with someone like yourself day and night. And never while awake or dreaming be disturbed, and you will live as a god among humans. For a human living among the immortal goods is not like a mortal animal. Authoritative doctrines. What is blessed and incorruptible has no troubles itself, nor does it produce them for any other. And so it embraces neither anger nor partiality, for all such things are in the weak. Death is nothing to us, for the dissolved has no perception, and what has no perception is nothing to us. The greatest pleasure is the removal of all pain. When pleasure is present, as long as it is there is neither pain nor mental stress, nor both together. Continuous pain does not last long in the flesh. Rather, extreme pain is present for the shortest time, and even what exceeds the pleasure in the flesh does not continue for many days. Chronic illnesses allow more pleasure than pain in the flesh. Living pleasantly is not possible without living prudently and well and justly. Nor can one live prudently and well and justly without living pleasantly. Whenever one of these is not there, such as living prudently, even though both living well and justly are there, it is not possible to live pleasantly. In order to be courageous in regard to people, any way of procuring this is a natural good. Some people intended to become notable and admired, thinking this would make them secure from people. So if the life of such people really was secure, they attained the natural good. But if it was not secure, they have not attained what they sought at the beginning by natural instinct. No pleasure is by itself bad, but the things which produce some pleasures bring on disturbances many times greater than the pleasures. If every pleasure could be intensified, both in time and about the whole organism, or in the most important parts of nature, the pleasures would never be different from each other. If the things producing the pleasures of profligates could loosen the fears of the mind about the heavens and death and pain, and if also they taught the limits of desires, we would never have a reason to blame them. They would be filling themselves with pleasures from everywhere, and would have neither pain nor stress, which is the real evil. If we had never been bothered by suspicions of the heavens and about death, whether it ever affects us, and if we did not observe the limits of pains and desires, we would not need natural science. It is impossible to dispel anxieties about the most important things if one does not understand the nature of the universe, but suspects there is something in the myths. Thus, without natural science, it is impossible to attain the pleasures uncontaminated. There is no profit in procuring security against people if we suspect what is ordained from above and from under the earth and absolutely in the infinite. When security from people based somewhat on the power of expelling occurs, security also occurs by the simplest prosperity from a quiet life and withdrawal from the many. Nature's wealth is both limited and easy to obtain, but that of vain fancies is driven to infinity. Chance seldom interferes with the wise. The greatest and most important things have been, are, and will be directed by reason throughout the time of one's life. The just is most free of trouble, but the unjust has the largest load of trouble. Pleasure in the flesh is not increased once the pain of need is removed, but it only varies. The limit of pleasure in the mind is reached by the calculation of these themselves and by these relations which prepare the greatest fears for the mind. Infinite and limited time have equal pleasure, if we measure the limits by reason. The flesh takes the limits of pleasure as infinite, and infinite time is prepared for it. But the mind, taking account of the end and limit of the flesh, and banishing the fears of eternity, prepares for a complete life and no longer requires infinite time. Yet it does not avoid pleasure even when circumstances prepare one for being led out of life, so that leaving, it does not turn down the best life. Whoever understands the limits of life knows how easy it is to obtain enough to remove the pain of need and to establish the whole life complete. Thus one no longer needs business earned by struggle. It is necessary to consider the established end and all manifestation to which we refer our opinions, or else everything will be full of uncertainty and confusion. If you fight all the sensations, you will have no standard by which you may judge even those which you say are false. If you reject absolutely any sensation and do not discriminate between opinion waiting for confirmation and what is already present in sensation and feeling, and every imagined attempt of the mind, you confuse even the remaining sensations by a rash opinion, so that you will reject the criterion altogether. But if you consider both what in your opinion is waiting confirmation and what is not witnessed, you will not escape error, as you will be maintaining all the ambiguity whenever judging right and not right. If you do not in every case refer each of the actions towards its natural end, but when avoiding or choosing, turn aside to something else, your actions will not follow your words. Of desires, all that do not lead to pain when they are not gratified are not necessary, but the craving is easily diverted when it is difficult or expected to produce harm. Of what wisdom prepares for the most blessed whole life, by far the greatest is obtaining friends. The same conviction that creates confidence that nothing terrible is eternal or even long-lasting also enables us to see that in these defined things, friendship especially is seen as accomplishing security. Of desires, some are natural and necessary. Others are natural and not necessary. Others are neither natural nor necessary, but come from vain opinion. Among those natural desires which do not all lead to pain when not gratified, though undertaken with intense effort, These also occur because of vain opinion. And it is not because of their own nature, but because of human vanity. Natural justice is a contract of expediency to prevent people from harming or being harmed by another. Those animals which are incapable of making compacts for the sake of not harming or being harmed, for these nothing is either just or unjust. Just so also are tribes which either could not or would not make compacts for the sake of not harming or being harmed. There was never any justice by itself, but at gatherings in various times and places, a compact with each other for the sake of not harming or being harmed. Injustice by itself is not bad, but in the feared consequence that you may be caught by the appointed punisher of such things. It is not possible for anyone secretly violating what was agreed with others in not harming or being harmed, to believe that one will not be caught, even if one has violated up to the present 10,000 times. For until the catastrophe, it is unclear if one will be caught. In general, justice is the same for all, for it is something brought together in community with each other. But applied specifically in various countries and times, the same does not turn out to be just for all. The testimony that is brought together in useful ways in community with each other, being thought to be just, has the character of justice, whether or not it is the same for all. If some law is made but does not prove expedient with each other in community, this no longer has the nature of the just. Yet if the expedient according to justice changes, and only for a time corresponds with the previous, nevertheless for that time it was just, as long as they are not bothered by empty speeches, but look simply at the facts. In cases where the circumstances are not new, and the conventional laws are shown not to be fitting to the previous in practice, these are not just. But in cases where the circumstances are new, the same actions that were held as just no longer are expedient. In that case, they were just then when they were expedient for each other in the community of citizens. But later they were no longer just when they were not expedient. Whoever is best at organizing against external danger builds the ablest clan, and those not able are not aliens. But those not able who are not this are unsocial, and it is better to exclude these. Those who have the power of courage to be prepared, especially from neighbors, so live pleasantly with each other, having the surest trust. And enjoying the fullest intimacy, they do not pity the dying as a catastrophe.